Hello and welcome to another episode on Maros Bonsai channel. In today's episode I would like to talk a little bit about design of naturalistic bonsai trees. I would like to use this opportunity when this tree start to have some leaves, but the foliage is not completely hiding the structure of a tree, how I build it. Some of you asked me before how I'm approaching design of my trees. I would like to shed a little bit of light on my approach and what I think about design. I would like to start this episode with a short disclaimer that some of viewers, especially those who think that trees should only be styled in some kind of traditional manner, may find the content of this episode distracting, and I would like to advise them not to watch it. In case you would like to write me a comment, it's design exercise and I would like to get as much feedback from you. What do you think about what I'm going to talk today? But please try to be factual in your comments. Try to restrain from being rude or in other way disrespectful. The topic is so big that I prepared few cue cards for myself not to get lost in what I'm going to tell you. Maybe I will use the board for the first time. I have my markers ready. Decidiuos tree design in naturalistic approach. How I'm styling my trees, what is my inspiration. The trees in nature grow in certain habit and I'm trying to mimic it in my approach when designing my trees. How the trees in nature are actually growing, how we can inspire ourselves when designing our naturalistic bonsai, what is affecting the tree growth and patterns of mature trees in the wild, what kind of factors are influencing the way how the tree is structured, what is the difference between traditional approach to design of deciduous single trees. All what I'm going to tell you is only what I think, just few of my ideas. You can think about it as a design exercise and just a mental exercise about how we are thinking about our trees and how we are approaching our design. And nothing is written in stone. I'm not saying that this is only way, this is the best way or something. I respect styles, all kind of design approaches, and I support the idea that everybody has the right to have his tree styled in any kind of manner in his garden. And even if he is allowed to go on exhibition with the tree, also the tree could be styled in any kind of way in case it's done technically properly and it's bringing something valuable to bonsai art. How the trees in the nature are growing and how they are changing during the time. One of the most important forces which are shaping the trees in nature is weather. And we have to understand that certain weather events are more rare than others and some are really frequent. The frequency of those weather events during the lifetime of mature tree has, in my opinion, crucial influence on how the trees are shaped and what we are seeing on the mature trees which are, let's say, older than a few decades. For example, if you have rain, which is happening very frequently in some countries, maybe every day, in some regions of Europe, maybe once a week, in some parts, maybe once a month, it's normal event and it's not really affecting the tree too much. When the tree starts to grow from a seed in the nature, it's usually single trunk which is growing up and it's trying to reach the maximum possible height, and then it's trying to split in some way, create the crown which is trying to expose itself to sun, generate as much sugars from the foliage as possible. But over the periods of time, the single trunk is exposed to those weather events. Normal standard weather events are not doing any kind of major damage to the tree. But what is happening over the time, I think, is that the single trunk is somehow on the top affected but by some weather event which is more rare than others. So for example, if you have very strong wind and you have single trunk which is growing up, then you have summer storm, the top of a tree is broken. On a place where the tree has broken apex, the new crown will start to shape and start to bifurcate and start to create secondary structure. We usually refer to this structure as branches, but I think good terminology is something what Walter Pall is advocating, and it's talking about this major part of a structure of a crown as subtrunks. We need to make this distinction, what is a trunk and what is a branch and what is a subtrunk, and I think in traditional design approach we were missing this part which Walter, I don't know if he was first or not, but he's using this term frequently, so he usually refers to this part of a structure as of a subtrunks, not as a branches. When the tree is broken and new subtrunks are created, they start to bifurcate. How they are exiting the trunk? In most of the cases, if you are going out during the winter or late autumn or early spring when the foliage on mature trees is not yet visible, you can see that most of the angles which the subtrunks are exiting the trunk are very sharp. Yeah? So if we say that this is horizontal level, usually it's more than 45 degrees, sometimes 50, sometimes 60, depending on a position in a crown. In upper parts of a crown, the angles are really steep. Yeah? So they are not, the branches are not growing in any kind of horizontal position. This is typical growth pattern of a tree. So in case it's growing up and it bifurcated, then it spends another season without any kind of disturbance, but maybe in some cases another extreme weather event is happening. And in case the branch is way too long, it's trying to reach very far away from the trunk. Again, there may be some storm or some other rare event which will break the branch again and force the tree to bifurcate again. And again, in very steep angle, the new branches are grown, the tree is widening its crown and it's trying to expose as much of its crown to sun to generate the energy for future growth. We can say that in nature, naturally, this kind of subtrunks are mostly growing up and away from central axis of the trunk. So this is how I think the trees are shaped in the nature. As I said, over a period of time, the more extreme weather events are happening, and what is happening, for example, to very mature trees, there is possibility of extreme weather event which is dramatically changing the appearance of a tree. What it could be in the nature, I experience myself sometimes when you have very early snow in the middle of autumn when the trees still have some foliage. What is happening that the snow is bonding on the foliage, the branches are heavily bending and the tree is experiencing so big forces, some fragile parts, even very thick ones, are broken off completely. Usually the top, which are really exposed and which are trying to reach maximum amount of light. And after an event like this, the tree is much shorter, the trunk is much thicker, and bifurcation of subtrunks is really wild. And then the fragile parts of branches are broken off and the new branches are growing in a really wild angles from the branch. So it's not anymore the juvenile growth of a single trunk with the straight branches, but it's very random. What is happening is that in case you have a snow in the middle of the winter, it doesn't cause so much damage. In case it's a lot of snow, of course, this is also extreme weather event, it can cause damage and some parts, fragile parts of a crown can break and they can force the tree to change its appearance again and adapt to the new light conditions, and the places in the crown which now have access to lights are the new parts of the crown are growing there, and the tree changed. And sometimes the weather events so extreme, like for example in some countries tornado. We had in Czech Republic a few years ago there was a big tornado, very local, which hit some part of a forest and one village, which drastically destroyed all what was there in its route. I believe that trees there were dramatically changed. Let's say 3, 4, 5 years after this event, the trees grew new branches, but the exposed, very long, very unstable parts of the trunks were broken, and tree needs to adapt to such event. In case we want to mimic this kind of pattern which is created by age and many extreme weather events, which trees which are older, like 100, 200 years or older, this kind of trees must have went through certain amount of this kind of extreme weather events, and you can see it clearly in the structure of the tree, that where are those parts where big parts of a trunk were broken off. You have some kind of uro there, or you have dead wood there, or 3, 4 new branches growing from the same spot, and this is the spot which was many years ago, 50, 100 years ago, was broken off in some kind of extreme weather event. If we compare the wild growth of mature deciduous trees to traditional approach of design of bonsai, what is the difference? What is the way how we see the trees on benches of our bonsai friends or on exhibitions? How this is different from the trees in the nature? There are certain rules which many people who are trying to design the trees, they are sometimes falling back to traditional teaching, and they are following certain rules. And you know, I have said it several times that I consider some rules to be good. For example, I'm trying to avoid 3 branches from one spot. I said it many times in many videos before. But there are certain rules which, in my opinion, one of them is most important, and those rules are creating what I call compound effect of rules on design approach to deciduous trees, and are affecting how the trees in result look like. If you are going through some kind of traditional education in bonsai styling and in some kind of bonsai training, usually the teacher tells you that check your nebari and try to find what is the best position of roots in a nebari. Then you have to define the front. Like many trees, this tree, for example, I can use this front or this front, but usually traditional approach to bonsai is you have to define front, and then all your design decisions are affected by the front which you choose. What usually is happening there in education is that when you have nebari and defined front, the teacher tells you to search for ideal trunk line. If you have a nebari and you have optimal trunk line, then the teacher usually tells you that your trunk should be tapering. There should be no place where the trunk is thicker in higher position than in the lower position. So we have nebari, we have ideal trunk line, we have tapering of a trunk, and what we are then teach to do is that you have to remove all unnecessary branches from your material. Let's say it's collected Yamadori tree with many options. So what we are taught to do is that we have to remove everything which we will absolutely not need. So remove this, go and remove completely all the branches which will be not necessary in your future design. What it will do, that it will basically limit your number of options which you will have in your way forward in designing the tree. It's a good thing in a sense that it will help you to focus, and it will clearly show you how your tree should be styled. So in case I'm doubting if this part of a tree is in a good position or not, or if it's, for example, causing some kind of inverse taper, then I may be advised by a teacher to remove it, and then in case it's not there, I will seal the wound, and then I have ideally tapering the trunk. I don't have to be afraid anymore about what this branch and what the future branches, secondary, tertiary branches on this, how they will affect the design, because the branch and sub-trunk will not be there anymore. What this approach to design of trees is, in my opinion, sometimes making you basically have no options left. What I mean by that in case I will show you the picture of some kind of mature Yamadori tree with many options, with many sub-trunks going in wild directions. In case I take this kind of wild tree and I'm trying to search for single trunk line, then it will in many cases dramatically change the tree. Of course, it simplified the design. After we have defined the nebari, ideal nebari, and find the future front, and we found the ideal trunk line of a tree, and we removed everything what is not necessary, and we try to avoid reverse taper on a trunk. We limit number of options, and we then think how we will grow the branches on a tree. In case we will go and we will follow this pattern of rules and approach to design, we reduce the options so much that we have no other options left than to create the tree with a triangular crown, with the shorter branches at the top, exiting the trunk at horizontal or very similar to horizontal position. Basically, many trees look then like clones of one of each other. I'm not saying that it's in some way bad or that trees shouldn't be styled like this. I completely understand the reasoning behind this kind of approach, and it makes a lot of sense from visual and also from horticultural aspect. Why is that? Because in case you have a crown where the branches are growing up, usually the branches which are growing up are growing this way naturally, and they are really gaining a lot of girth very quickly. So you need to be very careful at the top of the crown, so your branches will not get so thick that you have to exchange them for a new one too frequently, and you are creating a lot of scars in a trunk, in a sub-trunks. This kind of design with upward branches is also challenging in some way, but in case you stick to the traditional approach with the negative space between the branches, and the branches which are exiting the trunk not in a 60 degrees or 50 degrees from the horizontal level, but in 0 or 10 degrees from horizontal level, then and you have negative space between them, the light will approach many parts of a crown almost equally. If you will rotate your tree on a display table, you will allow a lot of light approach many parts of a crown. And of course, in case you are creating triangular shape of a crown with horizontal or close to horizontal branches which are tapering towards the apex of a tree, you have everywhere, you have a lot of places for light approaching the branches everywhere. You don't have a dieback. In case you are careful enough, you don't have a dieback. Yeah? So for example, this is my sketch of traditional designed tree with wide base, movement and single trunk line, and the branches exiting at the outside of the curves. This with red is a branch which is inside of a curve and it's in bad position. In traditional approach, I would say, okay, we choose the nebari, removed all the branches which were going up or some subtrunks which were going up. We try to eliminate all the branches which are exiting more than 2 branches from one spot, and then we eliminate all the branches which are from inside of a curve. And this is what we get. Triangular shape of a crown. Of course, as I said, advantage is that the light is approaching many parts of a crown. Horticulturally speaking and long term, this approach makes a lot of sense. Let's go back to comparing the design of bonsai to tree in nature. As I was trying to explain to you that trees in nature affected by weather events are trying to expose as much of its crown to sun. Usually, in most cases, the shape of crown is round, oval, depends on the age of a tree. The older the tree, the more oval and more the oval in let's say, horizontal position it is. In almost no cases, the crown is triangular because of how the trees are growing in the nature. And another thing which we have to think about is that, in my opinion, in traditional bonsai design, we are trying to combine fat base of a tree, which is a typical appearance of a mature old tree, with single trunk line, which is typical appearance of juvenile tree. And in my opinion, this is a little bit problematic. In the nature, normal trees usually don't have so dramatic changes in taper. In many cases, the nebari is not so dramatic. In many cases, it's not visible. I'm not saying we don't have to have nebari on the trees. I'm just saying that many trees in the nature are really boring. The change of a taper is not so dramatic. So I think this is one of the things which we can do in naturalistic bonsai, that our trees are more straight. We do not require that the trees change the taper of a trunk so drastically. Of course, if we are speaking about smaller trees, you need to emphasize it more. I think in shohin size and small trees, I'm not into the shohin. Most of my trees are this size or similar to this size. Of course, I understand that on a small tree, if you don't have a dramatically tapering trunk, it looks silly, juvenile, but on larger trees, I think we can live with the trunks which are not so dramatically tapering. Raw material from onset, its purpose was to be the bonsai, and it was grown like that. And I think in many cases in Europe, most probably in other parts of the world, the majority of this kind of material which is available to bonsai collectors is imported material from Japan or Korea. We have to understand that this material was grown, and most probably it was started when Madonna was singing like a virgin. And most probably some of those best trunks were started when the Cher was virgin. So it's long time ago. Imagine that if you have growers somewhere on a field where they are growing, for example, trident maples or mountain maples. Their intention is to build traditional trunk. They grow it with idea that they need some kind of gentle movement in the trunk, single trunk line. They are achieving it by horticultural methods. They will grow the trunk after the growing season, remove all the branches, restart the process on the next spring again, grow new branches which will generate the tapering of a trunk. The branches at the end of the season are removed again, so the scars are healed. So at the end you have scarless trunk with a lot of taper, with modest nebari, and then after a few decades you start to build the branch structure. You don't have many options left, because if you have slightly directionally changing trunk, tapering the trunk towards the apex, and it was created with intention that the branches will exit the trunk at the outside of the curves in horizontal or close to horizontal position, you will end up more or less the same result. in case you want to have something different, you have to work with a different material. You have to change the material grown, for example, in Japanese nursery dramatically. I remember I was discussing with Walter Paul some of his maples, which he started to acquire some maybe 10 years ago. And you may know the trees from his blog and from Facebook. And I was asking him why he didn't make them more naturalistic. And his answer was, I could have done it, but in that case I would have need to remove everything from the tree, leave only the trunk, and grow massive new subtrunks from different positions on a trunk and do it for many years. This is the reason why, in case you don't have this kind of subtrunk exiting at this exact spot and you wanted to have it there, it will take you maybe 10, maybe 15 years to grow it. In many cases you cannot change the material you have, and you have to work with what you have. Of course, there are some things which you can do. As I mentioned, Walter, when he purchased this kind of Arakawas and these Japanese maples, if you look closely in his older pictures, you will see that he tried to widen the paths on his tree. So if they were flat, he was trying with guy wires to make them more thick, to give them more natural appearance. Intentionally flat, so you will create a lot of negative space between the branches, but what you can do is that you will make it look wilder this way, that some branches go up, some go down, and the path is not flat anymore, but it's more wider. So even on the more traditional trunks you can achieve that, but it's only minor change to major design visual of the tree. And I have a few remarks here, and let me know what you think about it. What I think when I'm looking at many traditional trees, if you have twin trunk trees or triple trunk trees, usually the secondary trunk looks more natural than main trunk. It doesn't have a lot of branches, and how the secondary trunk is moving away from the main trunk with just 1, 2, 3 branches, it looks like a normal secondary trunk or sub-trunk looks like on a mature tree. So this is what I think what is happening, and try to look on many maples, and the secondary tree look, in my opinion, more natural than main trunk, and usually main trunk with the horizontal branches looks more traditional. When I was talking about production of material for bonsai, speaking about Korea and Japan, they do it their way for many decades, and they know how to grow the trunk, and they grow those trunks with intention to create certain type of design, and this is resulting how the trees even now are looking. Because if you go to any major company which is importing the material, if you go to Germany or Italy or Spain or France, to any company which is importing a lot of mature trunks or trees, those trees were started 50 years ago. It's natural they will have the appearance which was expected from them. And now still very few or almost nobody is growing, let's say, naturalistic maples and starter material, which will look more natural. All the growers are following growing approach, which will create the very similar trunks with single trunk line. Of course, one of the reasons why it's that this is the market, because people want to buy the trees like that, because they see them on exhibitions and they see them on social media, and if they want to have something like this in their garden, they will go to company which is importing the trees, and they are looking for a trunk with this kind of property, with wide base, single trunk line and horizontal branch. This is the market. 99, maybe 95% of people want trunks like this, so this kind of trunks are grown, this kind of trunks are imported. So it's nothing bad on it, it's just the market forces which are influencing the design of a trees. regarding the design of naturalistic tree is how you are designing the points where the branches, subtrunks are exiting part of a trunk. What I said already, in naturalistic design, I'm trying to do it like this, that the subtrunks are exiting in going up and away from the center of a tree, and then when the branch is splitting, for example, if you have branch like this and you have new branch growing from here, usually you have to go up and away from the center of a tree, and then it's going again somehow like this and splits again on two. And of course on mature trees, especially on, let's say, lindens or pears or old oaks, some branches at the end, tertiary, are going down. Some of them are even almost touching the level of the soil. Yeah? But the main parts of a trunk are usually growing up and away, and in this way they are trying to bifurcate. What I'm trying to do also, you can maybe see it on this tree, that in case you have bifurcation point on a tree, in case you are growing new part of subtrunk and you manage to have good tapering on it, and you have a place where you bifurcate, that you decide that this length is sufficient for you and you want it to bifurcate, so to have good ramification, and you have exit point of some new branch, then also in the nature, this point connecting this branch to subtrunk is creating new challenge for a tree. And usually it's not like that the tree continue to grow unrestricted in the same direction. Usually what is happening, that this point where the branch is connected, when the new forces of nature will again affect with rain, snow and everything, will create this connection a lot of forces, and this will change the direction of this trunk. It's not anymore straight, but it's diverges, yeah? So it changes the angle. In my opinion, this looks, in case you will do it like this, that you have branches exiting the straight trunk. This, in my opinion, doesn't look really cool. So you need to, in case you are growing all these new segments, in case this one is moving away, also this is somehow affected and has maybe not so exaggerated. Be careful with that, not to put a lot of waves and a lot of curves, so too much movement can be also distracting or not aesthetically pleasing, so be careful with that, but maybe think about this. Let's make some conclusion. In naturalistic trees, don't forget that some parts of a structure are not branches and are subtrunks, and usually they are going in very steep angles, and it's better if they are going in any steep angles outside of the main trunk. Don't forget that if you want your tree to look natural, the best way is not to stick with a single trunk. Style your tree that the apex of your tree is not triangular, tip of triangle, but it's more oval or round. Yeah? That's it for now, for today. Thank you very much for watching, and please don't forget, in case you have any idea about anything which I was talking here about, write me in the comment sections. I'm really curious what you have to say, what are you thinking. We can try to discuss it further in any future episode. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.